Now I know where I know him from.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulil kareem. Amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, welcome to our weekly program, Got Questions. Sorry for the delay. Mufti Saab, Mufti Abdullah, Samtu Asab. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah for joining. Jazakallah khairan for joining. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Wa salam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Mufti Asab, how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, doing well.
Good. MashaAllah, mashallah. I'm just going to quickly share this on my stream. Mufti Abdullah Sahab, what's something new that you are going on at your masjid that you would like to share?
We're starting reverts classes, inshallah, very soon on the weekends.
Nice.
So with a new person leading the male side, and hopefully this time we're gonna have it. We're gonna take it to a much more advanced level, inshallah.
So, are you guys using a specific curriculum for that, or what are you guys doing?
So no specific curriculum. At the moment, we're gonna focus on a few things.
Sorry.
So no specific curriculum.
Oh my God. I'm trying to share this, but it's going all over.
Turn your volume off.
I'm doing that right now. So sorry. Ajay, you were saying what, Musa?
So at the moment, we're not doing a specific curriculum because I've tried to look for curriculums, but all the ones that I've come across, they were for like maktabs, and the book itself looks childish. So I don't know if that was convenient to use or not. So at the moment, we're just gonna do one book for Aqidah, one book for fiqh, inshallah, and then once we get once the wheels start rolling on both of those, then we're gonna introduce Sirah as well.
That's really, really nice. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan. Brother Kevin, assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Mufti Muhammad Sahib, he says your post about taking the shoes during a wedding was much needed. Can you share a little bit about the post? I read through it a little bit, but I think it's important that we get a little bit more insight to it.
I think the post was about a common custom or a common tradition that we find in Desi weddings, where before the husband is able to go in or see his wife, you have the bride's family who will hold up a ribbon or something and prevent him from entering until he pays an amount. They'll usually say things like "no honey, no money, no money, no honey," "no pay, no play," and things of that sort.
No.
And likewise, they would take the groom's shoes and then make him pay for it to get it back. So
But the Kevin goes save the shoes. Kevin.
so this is a normal custom that happens in almost every Desi wedding. But then what's the Islamic perspective to that? One thing we need to remember is the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لا يحل مال امرئ مسلم إلا من طيب بنفسه. It's not permissible for you to take the wealth of someone unless they are happily and consentfully giving it to you. In many of these cases, although it's become a custom and they feel forced to give it and they're smiling when they're giving it, in most cases they're not happy with it. And it's not a small amount, sometimes it's a couple of $1,000s. So if the person is not happily giving it, then it's not permissible. If he is happily giving it as a gift, then there's no problem with that. But then it shouldn't be that he's showing that he's happily giving it, but in reality, it's more that he's forced to give it because of customary practices. And again, this might even have some connections with Hindu practices or un-Islamic practices. If that is the case, then that would not be permissible, irrespective of whether he's happy or not.
I think Jazakallah khair. I think the brothers who are posting up comments are the ones who had to pay big money.
Yo.
I've been to one wedding and the brother had to dish out $3,000 just at the gate.
Oh man!
Additional to all the unnecessary expenses that Desis have in their weddings.
Boy, if someone took my shoes, I'll be like, boy, keep them. I'm gonna wear the wudu chappals.
Mufti Abdullah, Jazakallah for making it easy for me.
Yeah, I know, right?
So Mufti Abdullah, a question that I would have a follow-up with you with regards to that is that, are you seeing that these customs make it very difficult for many people to even think about marriage because they have so many things that they see around, which sort of makes it very difficult for them to even have a plan to get married, because there are so many things that they're seeing in all these weddings and rituals Uh, and do you think that that plays a role in young people making decisions to get married early at a time when they can and it just becomes too difficult?
Definitely. I don't think young people. I think I would say middle aged. Young people are becoming more towards the I'm just gonna keep my wedding simple. I'm talking about younger, like people that are in their early 20s, from what I've seen. The ones that are middle aged, then since they grew up in that for a longer time, and they've been to many of those weddings, and obviously um, they have family that possibly do that. This is from what I've seen. I could be wrong in terms of the age, but yeah, some people it is about one thing adding on to the other, and it's just a bunch of things which are unnecessary, such as this, and then uh, the walima has to be humongous, and then after that you have to do this and you have to do that, and you got to pay for this, you got to pay for that. It's just so much money, and people are like, man, forget that. I'd rather just, unfortunately, I'd rather just keep a boyfriend and a girlfriend. At least all I got to do is take them out for a dinner date every week. And unfortunately, it doesn't make it permissible, but this is the thought process of some people, unfortunately.
Mm. So I think this is very, very important that as a community we really push for this, because one of the brothers Kevin mentioned, let's talk about wedding. Sometimes parents force their kids to have these huge weddings. What can be done? And I think with vice versa as well, where people just want to do something so big and lavish that they have seen others do it, that it takes them forever to really make that decision, and sometimes delaying a marriage leads to people getting involved in haram actions, and so much zina and adultery. And forgive me for this, but when we make marriages difficult, then adultery and fornication becomes easy. And when we make marriages easy, then you close the doors of haram and evil as well. Mufti Wasa, would you have anything specific to say?
I totally agree with you. The amount of expenses that come in, or customs that most most of the couples that are getting married, they're not interested in. But as Brother Kevin said, it's the parents that usually just force it on them. No, if we don't do it, then look kya kahenge. If we don't do it, what are the people going to say? We have to do it. We have to make sure it's grand. We have to make sure it's like it's humongous, and we're spending thousands of dollars. Whereas if you look at the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it was so simple. They literally had whoever was in the masjid get some dates and give it to them. If there was a lamb available, slaughter the lamb and feed the people around. It's interesting that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the most dearest person in the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. There was no one more dear to them than Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But there are two incidents I recall, two different Sahabi radiallahu anhum. They got married and they didn't even tell Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam later found out, seeing different marks, something like makeup on their clothing. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked, "Hey, did you get married?" They said, "Yes, we got married." And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, being the most closest, was not informed. And when he found out, he didn't mind also. So this is something that we need to keep in our mind, that hey, we don't need to invite every single dude that worked in our house, or every single dude that you saw once in your life, but now you got to invite him.
Right, right.
The simpler we keep it, the better, it's easier, and the more barakah. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did mention in the hadith, of the best nikah are those that aysaruha ma'unatan, that have the least expense. Why are you going to spend it on people who don't care? Like they spend so much on it to make sure that everyone is praising them, but there's always going to be individuals that will come and say, "Hey, this wasn't right. There wasn't
Right,
enough in the roast, or whatever it is." So
right.
instead, you want to start your nikah on a good note. Give some charity instead of spending so much. Feed the people that are less privileged, less fortunate, and you will definitely find barakah in your nikah.
SubhanAllah. Sab, Ajib thing is that if couples who are planning to get married, and then along with parents, were all to come to this one page where they said, you know what, it's not about what people will ever say about our relationship. We will have something simple, and whatever extra that we were supposed to spend, help others who may not be able to come to this position. Right, there is hundreds, if not thousands, and plus, women and sisters across the world who are not able to get married because their parents simply don't have enough just to get them married. And I think for many lavish weddings and ceremonies that happens, if they were to cut that expense, which is just so much extra, could help hundreds, if not thousands, of households. and imagine the barakah and blessings that they would receive, and from their children and then their progeny, and how much benefit that they will actually come. Allahu Akbar. Brother Zia, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh from Peru. I think you're in Peru or somewhere else. I think, Brother Zia. Welcome, salam rahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good to see you, Brother, as well. Sister Fatima asks a question. She said, assalamu alaikum. I know last week you told us that using pig's heart for transplant is not allowed. Does the ruling of using camel's urine for medical purposes and pig's heart for the transplant comes under the same category?
I
Wait,
don't think anyone said it's not allowed last week.
yeah, I
The
was about to say that.
what
Wait,
said was
did you
if
guys say that?
No.
what was said, I believe, was if there are alternatives, then it would not be permissible. If there are no alternatives, then it would be permissible. So same thing with urine or anything else that's impermissible or impure. By default, it's not permissible to make use of impermissible things or impure things. But if there is a genuine need, and this is prescribed by a competent doctor, and there are no adequate alternatives, then one will be permitted to use, or one will be rather excused to use the impermissible things.
Musab, one thing to ask or add to it is that the usage of that thing which is impermissible should be a life-saving component for that individual. Is that one of the conditions or no?
It should be life saving or something that is similar to that. So it's
Okay.
like a dire need. Not just, oh, I got a headache, now let me go take that. That won't work. But something that's a dire need. And there are no alternatives, as we said.
Hmm. So in our cases where we see, like, for example, the whole aspect of tadawi bil haram or anything like that, for example, we find medications or capsules with gelatins on it. So we would always have to look for alternatives where it's something that is safe and clean and does not have any of those components. Would that be our first step? And if
Correct.
not, then okay.
And in most cases, thanks to the vegans, there are alternatives that we can enjoy. Vitamins with capsules and all that, there are vegan friendly alternatives. Um, Anything that you're thinking of, in most cases, there are alternatives available. You just have to do the search. It might be slightly more expensive, but don't worry, you'll get rewarded for that.
SubhanAllah. Mufti Billah, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Um, so let's just suppose there is a capsule, like a multivitamin, which doesn't have any other, or let's just say there's a capsule and doesn't have any vegan alternative. And it's just taken not as a life-saving component and neither as a uh, life-improving component. I would say it's just taken maybe as a multivitamin or something of that sort, something along those lines, meaning something voluntary. In that case, obviously, this wouldn't apply.
Correct.
A person wouldn't, right?
Correct. That would not apply.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it would still remain haram.
Right. And and going back to the point, I know it might be a little bit of different topic, but the usage of the urine that was from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's, there are multiple answers to that, right? It's just not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said go and use, eat from its meat and use the urine. There are many components that have been mentioned with regards to the people who were the villagers, their even their beliefs, even their treachery. Some even have mentioned that there was a specific thing that was only for that. So there were a lot of prerequisites before this information, because a lot of time it's just like, oh, the Prophet ﷺ said to use it.
Correct.
Mm.
Right, so there was a lot of history or sira behind the entire incident, where a group of individuals had come from the outskirts, where they asked, and the Prophet ﷺ asked them to use the meat and the urine, and there was just exceptions at that time. It was just not at all times. So, but as I mentioned, he's in Panama, he's in Peru next week. That's good. Jazakallah khair. May Allah make your trip safe. Bless the vegans, Brother Kevin.
If people were as aggressive as vegans, if Muslims were as aggressive as vegans in terms of halal, I mean, the world would be a different place.
Wallahi, I was going to say the same thing. I was coming to my mind, but I completely forgot. I was thinking, like, you know what? The amount of Muslims that exist, Allahu Akbar, are much larger, in number and force, and it's a religious responsibility. And if we were to put our preferences and our needs I think when we have the consumer pressure everywhere, it sort of clears out things. And I really want to make sure that our brothers and sisters who are out there, look, we trust our brothers and sisters selling halal and good, but it's your haq to know that whatever you are eating is right. You're not getting it for free. You're paying, you're working hard, you're spending time, you're earning, and make sure that whatever you're eating and consuming, you have it in front of you and it's proven to you it's halal, right? If we don't risk our dunya, if we don't risk our mal and wealth, then why risk our deen with things like that? So you're right, Mufti Abdullah Sahab. I think if we all as Muslims were to really push forward with the importance of halal, we can definitely make a lot of changes. Brother Farhan Ahmed asks, Assalamu alaikum, the 30 juz we have, how did it come to be? Because nuzul and stuff, or tartib?
Yeah, walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So the Quran is 114 surahs, the same 114 surahs that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam received, and that was passed down from him all the way to us. From that time until now, there were different scholars who tried to divide the Quran in terms of just division for ease of memorization. So for that, some scholars divided it into 30 juz for ease of memorization and for ease of revision. Some even divided it into 7 portions, which we commonly know as madahib. So
Right.
yeah, so it's just scholars afterwards. It's just division of the 114 surahs of the Quran itself, but the Quran itself is the same exact Quran. It's just a way of division for ease of memorization. Now, if you're asking about the exact history, I don't have the exact history and the exact names from the top of my mind. Maybe Mufti Muaz has it.
I don't recall exactly.
Okay, but that's the overall. That was the purpose and that was the
So
idea.
the compilation of the Quran began, right? I think, is it just about the 30 juz we have? How did it come to be? So what we understand and we know is that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ over the period of 23 years. Some surahs were revealed all at once, some of the larger surahs were revealed at different portions at different times. But the Prophet ﷺ did review this Quran with Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam every year, and he narrated this to the companions. And that's how the Sahaba learned and memorized. And then at the demise of the Prophet ﷺ, and of course the demise and passing away of the large amount of Qur'an, that's the time where the compilation actually began, where the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajmain. Is that similar? I'm not sure if this is a question or not.
I think they're asking. We have 114 surahs, but who divided it into 30 juz? That's what he's asking.
Oh, some of the 30 juz we have. How did it come? Oh, I get it. I was just talking about 30 juz. I get it. Jazakallah khairan. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I think that's why we have like the manzil and the hizbins and other portions of it. Good.
Yeah.
But Kevin asks, oh, important question. I have a daughter who is 6, turning 7 this year. MashaAllah. Does she have to fast and pray 5 times a day at 7?
Go ahead.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As long as she's not baligh, it's not necessary on her. But as Muslim parents, it's important that we educate and nurture our children from a young age. She's 6, turning 7. She's still very young. Encourage her to fast a few days during the month. Allow her, even if she's not fasting, teach her the importance of fasting. Teach her the values that we have. What are the lessons we learn from fasting? What's the purpose of it? And bring that zeal into her that once she gets older, it's easier for her to start fasting. And start training her from now. Maybe fast a day, 2, 3 days, or something, whatever is easier for her. Maybe even start with half a day, so that when she does become baligh, when she does become mature, it's not difficult on her to immediately jump from 0 to 30.
Mm. So the question is, Brother Kevin is asking, but aren't boys supposed to at 7?
No, the same would apply for boys. The obligation is only once they become baligh. So from 7, we start training them. Normally at the age of 9, 10, 11, that's when they become baligh. That's when it becomes necessary on them. But from the age of 7, we start training them, preparing them for it.
Right. So the 7, the age 7 or the age 10 that has come in the hadith with regards to making children start praying and then enforcing it at the age of 10 is for recommendation or creating habit. The fulfillment of commandments or obligation in Islam will become necessary at the time when they become baligh, meaning they reach the age of puberty for both boys and girls, right?
Yes.
And if and specifically if they don't reach the age of puberty at the age of 12, 13, or even younger, is there there is a cut line? Is it 15? Is it 13 that they have to do it if they haven't reached the age of puberty and they reach this age?
Yes. 15.
Right. And of
Oh,
course,
side note, yeah, 15 is lunar years.
Years.
yeah. Muftullah, you were going to say something on side note?
Yeah, so I know some parents, they do like for their children, they do like a half fast, like maybe from like breakfast. After doing breakfast, they'll be like, okay, let's fast for the next 2 hours, or let's fast until Dhuhr. That also works. It's just part of nurturing.
Subhanallah.
So fasting the entire day, 1 or 2 days, is very difficult at the age of 6 and 7. Illa mashallah. Except some, I know some kids can do it. I know your kids can do it. You, Shadahi, and probably Jumaina, they can probably do it. But those are my nieces, my niece and my nephews, by the way. So I know they did it in the past, but not all the kids are like that. Especially kids that are not used to that, not used to staying hungry for an extended duration. If if you try to do that, they're gonna get very, very cranky.
Mm.
If kids don't eat and they don't sleep, they get very cranky. So I mean, whatever works for you in terms of however you want to start it, however you want to encourage them.
Qari Nazul Sab's throwing out the references while
Yeah,
he's driving.
I think he's sleeping, eating, and dreaming about iftar right now.
I know,
He's in
subhanAllah,
that,
Allah,
he's in
Allah,
that
Allah
mode.
rewarded. There's a lot, man. You know, I was just thinking, like, with our kids being at that age of like 9, 7, 8, inshallah, I think I'm just seeing this as a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they're coming to an age where they will reach puberty, and it's like the winter fasts will start, and it will be like shorter days. So mashallah, inshallah, will be easier for them to start and create that habit. Just thinking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mufti Abdullah Saab's, oh, Mufti Muhammad Saab, maybe he dropped his connection. So Fatima Hanif asks, can you also elaborate on Qasr al-Jama? Under what circumstances it's allowed, and does madhab other than Hanafi allow Qasr al-Jama during Safar? And can one switch between different madahib as it suits him in different situations?
You, no, I'm gonna leave that to you.
I was gonna wait for Mufti to ask because he brings a different mazhab, not mazhab Islam. Mashallah,
Yeah, he brings a different mother.
he no madhab in the question right there. Does madhab
Oh,
allow? I guess a school of thought because he'll bring a different perspective, right?
did you just say he makes up his own madhab?
No,
No,
no, no. I
what
say
you
he will
saying,
bring
man?
I say he will bring a different perspective of a madhab.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I know. I'm just
so
messing with
so
you.
so
I think his phone died or something, or is
yeah.
overheating like last time.
I know. So, I guess with qasr, and jama, according to the ahnaf, it is not allowed in any condition. Of course, unless you are in Hajj and then you are doing the jama'ah for the aspect of Arafah and then Muzdalifah. But otherwise, in all conditions, in all circumstances, it is not allowed. The only thing that the Ahnaf do allow is where you do Jama Suri, not Jama Haqiqi, where you do not do Jama or collectiveness of two salah and prayers in one particular time, but you can pray at the maximum ending time and the earliest time of the next prayer itself, which is Jama Suran, which is not literally, but figuratively, where you say it's Jama, but in reality you're praying both of the prayers in their own specific time. The other schools, I think Mufti Wasab, inshallah, as soon as he joins us, he will be able to give us a Shafi and the other opinions as well. I think the Kitabul the fatwa from Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, also is not acceptable. Wallahu alam. I don't remember, but I'll have to go back to the book for that. Can one switch between different madahib as it suits him in different situations? No. And I think that's very, very important for us, is where we make ourselves obedient to deen. All of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and these madahib that we talk about, Shafi, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, they're all haqq, they're all true, they're all upon Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they are Quran and Sunnah. But the only issue is that if we begin to pick and choose from particular narrations or traditions or rulings, then we will make the deen our subordinate. We'll make deen our tabi, meaning whatever we want, we will make deen according to our desires. And that's what happened to the nations before us. But when we follow a particular path itself, it really makes us more accordance with principles. And when principles are set, you don't change. Time changes, principles don't change. So you're really grounded, you're really protected, and you're really preserved through always. And Mufti Sahib, please kindly, if there's anything specific
Yeah.
you would like to.
So each madhab has its own set of principles. So the Hanafis have their own set of usul al-fiqh, they call it. They have their own set of rules of jurisprudence, from where they derive the fiqh, how they're going to derive it, how they're going to come about rulings from the ahadith and the Quran. Each one of them, each madhab has its own set of principles. The thing is, you cannot pick and choose between those sets of principles. This is the reason why you cannot choose between different madhahib, is because you'd be breaking those principles. And when you break those principles, then there's no principles that you're actually following. And when someone says, I follow the Prophet, well, how do you know what to do in this specific situation when there's 3 different ahadith and all 3 of them are contradicting each other? How do you know what the Prophet did? This is why we have those set rules and those set principles, so we can just look at what the scholars wrote, and khalas, that's it. That's what we go by.
Jazakumullah khairan. Brother Kevin asks a good question. What is the history behind the Rajab Dua? So with regards to the famous tradition or narration that has been reported by Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, which reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite the dua, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajabi wa Sha'ban wa balighna Ramadan, when the month of Ramadan would commence, which means that, oh Allah, grant us barakah and blessings during the month of Rajab and Sha'ban, and allow us to reach the month of Ramadan. This hadith has been reported in Shu'ab al-Iman. I think also in many of the other kitabs as well. But some of the scholars of hadith have classified this hadith to be classified as weak, da'if, but suitable to practice. And to say that this dua is baseless is just exaggeration, meaning there's no haqiqat or reality to this. Allama Nawawi, rahmatullah alayhi, the great scholar and the author of Riyadh al-Salihin, and many in his kitab Al-Adhkar, actually has mentioned that this hadith is slightly weak. He doesn't say it's fabricated, it's false, but he says it's slightly weak. And Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, rahmatullah alayhi, in his kitab Lataif al-Ma'arif, actually mentions that this narration is suitable to prove the merits of reciting this dua, meaning just to understand that it should be noted that when hadith is weak, some narration or traditions are weak, and they have dua inside or supplications, they can be implemented, meaning they could be practiced and they could be recited. And it's not a fiqh ruling or jurisprudence ruling, so it could be actually recited. Can we say Rajab Mubarak? There is nothing like that in Islam. Mufti Sahib, what is about Rajab Mubarak?
Rajab Mubarak. Is it Ramadan Mubarak?
That's a question that needs to be discussed. Rajab Mubarak, I don't think that there's anything to it. I don't think there's anything Islamic to commence. Yes, it's
that's like saying, sorry, I cut you off. That's
no,
like
please,
saying,
please.
but answer this as well in your in what you're gonna say.
No, please.
Like, people ask me, can we say Juma Mubarak?
Yeah.
So Juma Mubarak, Rajab Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak, Eid Mubarak, all of these, too many Mubaraks, man.
That's true. What do you think? What you said? What's the ruling of these Mubaraks?
Okay, so when someone asks me, can we say Juma Mubarak? They also added the condition, or they also added a note saying that if I don't send Juma Mubarak to my contact, these specific contacts, they mind. So when it's to that extent where something that is not even mandatory, something that is not even a sunnah, uh, and someone is going to mind if you don't do it, then at that point we have to really think about what are we doing. At that point, it would not be. It would turn into something we can call a bid'ah because
Correct.
we're making something that is not part of the sunnah an obligation. So when it goes to that extent where if we don't say Juma Mubarak or we don't say Ramadan Mubarak, then people are going to
Correct.
be angry at us, or people are just not going to, they're going to be disappointed. In that at that point, and when it gets to that level, then it becomes a bid'ah. But other than that, if you're just happy for Jumu'ah, you're just happy for Ramadan, would there be a problem? I don't think there would be a problem
Right.
as long as
Right.
you don't think it's necessary.
Right, no, definitely, right? Jummah is definitely a Mubarak and a blessed day, and that what
Yeah,
we find from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the virtues of it as well, and a believer to also be fortunate enough to notice and find this day and be alive and witness the day is a day of blessings and barakah, and you know it's an expression, but there is no mention. From any of the hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ or his Sahaba congratulated or said Mubarak to each other when Jummah had come. So one may congratulate or say Mubarak with Jummah Mubarak on a condition. It is not regarded to be a sunnah or it's necessary, as you mentioned, that if they don't say it, then they get mad.
yeah.
So as long as they don't consider it to be something necessary.
So I think this is just a suggestion. I think along with Jummah Mubarak, a person should also maybe in that same message say, remember to send salutations on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this blessed day. That would be much more beneficial than just saying Jummah Mubarak, because Jummah Mubarak doesn't really have any benefit to anyone. I don't. There's no benefit. So along with Jummah Mubarak, say, remember to send durud and salah an nabi. And with Ramadan Mubarak, yeah, or read Surah Kahf, what Brother Kevin said. Along with Ramadan Mubarak, say, don't forget or take the opportunity of this Ramadan very seriously, and so on and so forth. Just some words of wisdom, words of advice.
Jazakallah khairan. So we'll end here now, inshallah. Brother Kevin asked a good question. We'll take it from next week. Why should we recite Surah Kahf on Jummah? I think that's a great idea. You know, even the commentary of Surah Kahf is so important to be done by some scholars where you can read the entire commentary. And it really, Mufti Sahib, I used to get this question a lot. And then we started doing the commentary of Surah Kahf in our masjid. And I felt that many of the questions were answered of why is it protection against Dajjal. There are so many things that, subhanAllah. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti Sahib. Alhamdulillah. We're just talking about Jummah Mubarak and Ramadan Mubarak and others, and the hadith of the history behind the Rajab Dua itself. We just briefly shared some things with regards to the hadith being present but being daif and weak. But of course, dua being weak could be practiced, or more or less in effect. The last question came was with regards to Surah Kahf on Jummah, but we said it's a longer question, so maybe we'll take it next week, inshallah. Mufti Abdullah Sahib, anything from your side?
No, Jazakallah khair.
We're good?
But yeah, Brother Kevin made a very nice hashtag up there. What was it?
Uh,
Normalize simple nikah. That was a nice one. I like that. Normalize simple nikah.
Right there.
Yeah. So shout out to Brother Kevin for that.
Normalize simple. So we'll end with the hashtag normalize simple nikah, inshallah. We'll see you guys next week. Keep us in your dua. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.